Today, we're diving into a very, very modern problem. What happens when cryptocurrency, which is a huge part of so many people's lives now, slams into one of the oldest institutions we have, marriage? It's a really fascinating mix of digital money and, well, real life. So let's just get right to it. Imagine your crypto wallet is holding a life-changing amount of money. You feel like you're totally set. But what happens if your marriage doesn't last? Is that digital fortune you've built actually protected? That is the big question we're going to tackle today. So, here's our game plan. We're going to start with the unique headaches crypto causes in a divorce. Then, we'll look at the prenup as your best defense. We'll walk through a great real-world example, see what happens when there isn't a prenup, and then finally, we'll get into the nitty-gritty of what you need to put in your own crypto clause. All right, first up, crypto's divorce dilemma. And yeah, we're calling it the new digital battlefield for a reason. So why a battlefield? Well, think about it. Unlike a house or a simple bank account, crypto is incredibly hard to pin down. Its value can swing like a pendulum from one day to the next, and its anonymous nature can make it really tempting for someone to try and hide it. All that turns what should be a straightforward division of assets into a seriously ugly fight. And these challenges, they all kind of pile on top of each other to create this perfect storm. You've got lawyers needing to hire super expensive forensic investigators just to chase down digital wallets. You combine that with the crazy price swings and just the normal stress of a separation, and you've got a recipe for a long, painful, and very, very expensive legal war. So, how in the world do you avoid that battlefield? Well, that brings us right to Section 2, the prenup. Think of it as your shield, a tool for bringing clarity and control back into the picture. This, right here, is your key. A prenuptial agreement, or a prenup, is really just a legal contract that you and your partner sit down and create before you get married. It lets you write your own rules for your finances, and you can specifically spell out exactly how assets like crypto will be handled if you ever go your separate ways. And the benefits? They really boil down to one simple, powerful idea: control. With a prenup, it's you and your partner making the decisions, not some judge in a courtroom. And when you plan ahead like that, it almost always leads to way lower legal costs and just dramatically reduces the chances of a nasty fight over your crypto down the road. Now, theory is one thing, but let's see how this plays out in the real world. That brings us to Section 3, a little story about Sarah and Jake and a decision that turned out to be worth $1 million. Okay, so this is Sarah, and like a lot of early crypto investors, she decided to get into it long before she'd even met her future husband, Jake. She put $50,000 into Bitcoin. Now, that's a pretty serious investment for sure, but what happened next is what makes this story so incredible. So years go by, they get married, and then, unfortunately, they decide it's time to get a divorce. And by this point, the entire crypto world had completely changed. Remember that $50,000 investment? Well, it had absolutely exploded in value. By the time they were splitting up, Sarah's Bitcoin was worth a staggering $1 million. So the big question is, who gets that money? This is where their planning paid off in a huge way. Their prenup had this one beautiful, simple clause. It said that any crypto Sarah owned before the marriage would stay her own separate non-marital property. End of story. And the result of that one sentence, it was clean, it was simple, there was no fight, no need to hire those expensive accountants, no drawn-out court battle. The prenup just worked. It did its job, and Sarah's $1 million investment was totally protected. But what if they hadn't had that agreement? What if they just hoped for the best? Well, that takes us to Section 4, the no prenup scenario. This is where you're pretty much just leaving your finances to chance. You're really looking at two completely different paths here. With a prenup, you follow a plan that you created that brings clarity, lower costs, and real peace of mind. Without one, you're stuck with the court's plan, and that almost always means conflict, high costs, and a whole lot of uncertainty. And what is the court's plan exactly? Well, in a lot of places, any crypto that was bought during the marriage is probably going to be considered community property and split right down the middle, 50-50. And if a court even thinks for a second that assets are being hidden, it will not hesitate to issue subpoenas to exchanges and bring in experts to track down every last Satoshi.
Okay, this brings us to our final and maybe most practical section. Section 5, drafting your crypto clause. Let's talk about the key things you need to think about for your own agreement.
So, if you're going to put crypto in a prenup, you have to address these 4 points. First, valuation. How are you going to value it, especially since it's so volatile? Second, access. Who actually controls the wallets and holds the private keys? Third, future purchases. What happens to new crypto you buy while you're married? And fourth, and this one's a biggie, taxes. Who is on the hook for capital gains if it gets sold or transferred?
And please, listen to this very carefully. This is a critical warning. A prenup is built on a foundation of complete trust and honesty. If you fail to fully disclose every single digital asset you own, every wallet, every exchange account, a judge can and likely will throw the entire agreement right out the window. And then you're left with absolutely no protection. So, let's just do a quick recap of the most important points. 1. Crypto makes divorce a lot more complicated. 2. A prenup is your absolute best tool for clarity, control, and protection. 3. You must disclose everything. It's completely non-negotiable. And 4. A strong crypto clause has to cover valuation, access, and what happens with future growth.
We'll end on this one thought. You protect your digital assets with a complex private key, right? But a well-drafted prenup, that can be the key that protects your entire financial future. The only question is, are you using both?